Hello and welcome to Dawn Chorus Writes, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction and audio fiction. This is the series, The Truth Behind the Lie, that's written by Shika, narrated by Dawn, myself, hello, and it is part of Shika's Wednesday, but my schedule's all over the place, so please bear with me. And this is part 22, so make sure you go and send Shika some love. All her information is down below for writing it. Make sure you send me some love by smashing that like button. Comment down below what you think of it and what will happen in the next one, and make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out on future parts and other stories, and I hope you enjoy. Part 22. Marinette was exhausted. Yesterday had been full of confusion and emotional upheaval. Her argument with Alia, Adrien kissing her on the steps, her time with Kwami, Cat's confession, the date with Adrien, the confrontation with his father, and learning that Gabriel had an artifact that could control Adrien, all blurred together into a storm that thundered in her head and throbbed her of sleep. Despite a weariness that made her feel heavy and raw, she sat stiffly next to Adrien during the short ride to school. He looked as tired as she felt. "I'm sorry about last night, Marinette," he murmured, the concealer under his eyes obvious at this distance. "He had no right to talk to you that way. I told him so after you left." "I know, Adrien," she said vaguely, her mind still in a fog. "It's okay. It wasn't your fault. I'm not mad at you." Are you okay, my sweet? You seem kind of lost." As tentative as his voice was, she twitched as if he struck her. The nickname that had made her heart sore now felt like a blow. "Adrien, maybe we should give up," she sighed, rubbing her forehead to ease the headache that had plagued her since last night. "Why? If this is about what he said, then you can ignore it. I am. He isn't going to stop me from..." "He's your father, Adrien. I know how much his approval means to you, and he was so angry about me being there with you last night." He wrapped his arms around her as much as the seatbelts would allow. "Marinette, you mean so much more to me. I promised I would stand by you, and I will. I'm not going to step aside and let Lila torment you just because Gabriel has his ascot tied too tight." As much as she wanted to lean against him, to bask in the warmth and comfort he offered so freely, and she never had known she couldn't. Not when she had a wedge driven between Adrien and his only surviving family. Not with his father using a ring to force his obedience. Oh, knowing his father was trying to control him? It made that day he was to leave make so much more sense. Do you ever feel like there's an invisible force holding you back? He must have tried to talk to his father that day, and Gabriel had used the ring. Marinette couldn't put him at risk of his father's abuse, not when Shadowmoth was so strong and could find out about it if Adrien or Gabriel were to fall under his control. How Adrien had avoided being akumatized when his life was so suffocating and hurtful was beyond her, but she was not going to let it happen now. Not when her heart beat in his chest. "Adrien," she said softly, knowing she sounded defeated. "Lila has connections to your father. He listens to her. If we push her too far, she's gonna get you pulled from school, and I can't allow that." "But, Marinette, I'm not afraid of him or Lila." "Maybe we should be," she declared as they pulled in front of the school, blinking the tears away harshly. "I told you when this started that if it was going to get you into trouble with him, then you needed to back down. I'm not losing you too." With that, she released her safety belt and opened the door. She was walking up the steps with Adrien running to catch up with her when Lila caught her eye in the doorway to the courtyard. The smug look on her face said it all. Lila had won. She knew it. She knew she had Gabriel on her side now, and she would use it if they kept this up. It didn't matter what happened to her. Marinette had to protect Adrien, protect his freedom even at the cost of her own. She wouldn't let him be turned into a prisoner again. "Wait up, my sweet," Adrien called, catching up with her at the top of the stairs. He tried to take her hand, but she wrapped her arms around her book bag instead. He looked at her, confused and slightly hurt, but Lila's triumphant voice made the point for her. "Oh, trouble in paradise? Too bad Gabriel doesn't approve of your little sweet Adrien. Maybe now you'll see what kind of girl she really is. She isn't worthy of you." Marinette blanched, not at the cruel words, but at Adrien's face as his jaw tensed and his eyes burned with baleful fire. "How dare you!" he growled, fists clenched at his sides and chest heavy in anger. "Not worthy of me? I'm the one not worthy of her. Take it back, you lying snake." Lila flushed at his tone and harsh words, harsher than anyone had heard from him. Marinette pulled him away by the elbow, murmuring, "Not now, my prince. Not like this." Lila's smile widened and triumphant as her voice barely audible over the noise of arriving students. Listen to her aggress. She knows who has the high ground now. I win either way. With a flip of her hair as she sauntered off, arrogance in every swish of her hips. As much as she felt like throwing up, Marinette swallowed back the bile and the fear that lodged in her throat. "Adrien, I need you to calm down, okay? Please?" He took a deep breath, his hands clenching and unclenching as he pulled his anger under control once more. "Sorry. I just can't stand the way they talk about you." "I know," she whispered. I think it would be best if you sit next to Nino today. You haven't had much time with him, and I bet he misses you." "But that leaves you with Alia, and after yesterday, you don't need that stress either," he said, taking her hand and squeezing it 3 times. She squeezed his 4th. "I'll manage. See you in class?" "Yeah." Marinette released his hand and walked away on her own, leaving her heart behind and hoping against hope that Lila wouldn't retaliate against Adrien. The day dragged on. She could feel Lila's smug smile and piercing gaze boring into the back of her head. Marinette mysteriously tripped over something every time she changed class. Feet, bag straps, books randomly appearing in her path, and a full tray of salad with dressing got dumped down her back during lunch. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Marinette," Lila cooed, her voice sympathetic but her eyes pleased. "I didn't see you stopping." "I'm sure you didn't, Lila. No harm done," she replied dully. "I'll just pop home and change." "What? Realize you're going to lose Adrien after all? The game's no fun if you don't play." "Maybe I'm tired of this game," she growled under her breath as she walked away. "Go and find someone else to play with." Lila laughed cheerfully as Marinette left the school to change, tears stinging her eyes. When she got back just in time for class, she flopped her head down on her old desk and buried her face in her arms. "Are you all right, Marinette?" Alia whispered as Miss Bustier called roll. All she could do was shake her head. I know things have been off between us for a while, but I'm still here for you, okay?" Marinette couldn't answer. It was all she could do to keep herself from spiraling. She had to keep her distance. She couldn't even take comfort in Adrien's hand in hers before class started, or the warmth of him at her side, or the scent of oranges and allspice that she fell asleep smelling in her hair. She had told him to sit with Nino. He had been turning to check on her in every class they had together, and she was pretty sure he had told Nino to keep an eye on her too, from the way their friends had been hovering, but it wasn't the same as having her prince beside her. No, he wasn't her prince. He had never been hers to begin with. Thinking of Adrien being controlled by his father, by Lila, choked her with anger, leaving her trembling with fear and gasping in despair. It was like her nightmares all over again, with Gabriel and Lila caging him while she was trapped, unable to save him. She had to back away from him so he would be safe, even if she was once again trapped in Lila's webs of lies. She was worse off than when they started. Adrien was in danger from his father and Lila and Shadow Moth, and Lila still held their friends in the palm of her hand, with everyone at school believing her. Adrien was hurt that she wanted to back off from him, not knowing she knew he was in danger and was doing it to keep him safe. And the worst part was she now knew what it was like to be with him, and it was tearing her apart at the thought of having to leave it behind. Miss Boosty had been discussing that day's assignment, something about poetry, but Marinette just let it wash over her. That is, until she heard her call for Adrien. Adrien, would you please read the poem for us? Then we can discuss it. Yes, miss, he replied, casting Marinette a worded glance over his shoulder as he stood. They are not long, the weeping and the laughter, love and desire and hate. I think they have no portion in us after we pass the gate. They are not long, the days of wine and roses. Out of a misty dream, our path emerges for a while, then closes, within a dream. The words burnt in her heart like a brand. They weren't long, were they? She and Adrien were together, but still as far apart as ever. Misunderstandings and secrets and lies. Now she had to back away to protect him. It had been a wish, a lie, a dream, but the feeling that had been growing even greater in her was real. She couldn't tell him, and it would be over, and it broke her heart, just as the words burnt it, leaving nothing but sorrow and ashes in place. Gabriel was manipulating him with magic, and if either of them got akumatized, Shadow Moth would know and hurt Adrien even worse. Fighting Cat Blanc had been a nightmare, leaving her waking up screaming her partner's name in a cold sweat even a year later. But fighting Adrien? A twisted monster with her love's face, an Akuma under complete control calling her his sweet? Marinette couldn't do it. She was already broken. Having to fight Adrien would kill her. She had to let him go. She had to hurt him in order to save him, even as it broke her. Even as the dream closed around her, strangling the last of her hope. Without even realizing it, she was on her feet and fled from the classroom, tears streaming down her face. Her heart thundered in her ears as she ran, deaf and blind to the world around her. The book falling from his hands, Adrien paused for a heartbeat before running towards the door. Adrien, where are you going? Miss Boosty asked. I have to go after Marinette, he declared. She's upset, and I won't let her be alone to get akumatized. He glared over his shoulder at the rest of the class, from Lila's smug little smile to Chloe's superior disdain to Alex's frown of concern, and finally settling on Alia and Nino. Since I'm the only one willing to listen to her? Alex gave him a determined nod, but Adrien ignored the rest of the embarrassed looks that swept through the class and ran out of the room in search of Marinette. He caught up with her on the stairs. "Marinette, wait, please," he called, putting on just enough speed to catch her hand and pulling her to a sudden halt. "What's wrong?" He tried to pull her into a hug to comfort and soothe her, but she pushed him away, tears streaming down her face. "Marinette, please talk to me," he pleaded, reaching out to caress her cheek. She let him just for a moment and then turned her face away. I can't do this anymore, Adrien," she sobbed, sounding so broken it was like a knife to his heart. I just can't. It hurts too much." "What happened? Did I do something wrong? Did I overstep your boundaries last night? If I did, I'm so sorry. I never meant to upset or frighten you, Marinette." She shook her head. No, you're wonderful. I just can't. I won't put you at risk." He stepped closer and pulled her against him, wrapping his arms around her shaking frame, wanting desperately to ride the waves of sorrow with her. She pushed feebly against his chest, as if she wanted his comfort and yet desperate to flee. "Tell me what's wrong, my sweet, please. How can I fix it if I don't know what is broken?" "They're not long enough," she said thickly. "The days of wine and roses. Why do all the beautiful dreams have to shatter, leaving me with nightmares?" "I don't understand, Marinette. Did I hurt you somehow?" "Yes. No. I don't know. I just can't do this anymore. I can't keep fake dating you." With a strength bordering on violence, she tore herself away from him, running for the safety of her home. Adrien just stared after her, shock, confusion, and hurt, wearing for dominance in his head. "Adrien, go after her!" Plague insisted from inside his shirt. "You can't let Marinette be akumatized." That shook him from his confused thought as a panic sunk in. "No, Marinette!" He ran across the bakery and ducked into the alley behind it. Calling on his transformation, he made it to a balcony in 3 leaps. He jerked the skylight open, almost tearing it from its hinges before tumbling down into Marinette's bedroom. She had thrown herself onto a chaise, sobbing bitterly as a black butterfly approached her purse unseen. "Catalysm!" he cried, leaping from the bed and crushing the foul Akuma as his power charged it to ash. "Cat!" Marinette bolted upright, red-rimmed, eyed wide in horror. He pulled her into his arms as she collapsed against him, trembling with sorrow and reaction. "What happened, Princess? Adrien said you ran off. He's worried sick." He really was. What had happened to her had led her to nearly being akumatized, and the thought churned his stomach. Marinette had never been successfully akumatized before, and the thought that he was somehow responsible, he couldn't bear it. She wrapped her arms around his middle, trying to pull herself under better control. "I'm so sorry, Cat. I didn't mean to fall apart like this. I would never want to fight you." He held her close, stroking her hair with his gentle hands. "Shh, I know, Marinette. Just talk to me, okay? Tell me what's wrong. Please." "I just can't do this anymore," she murmured. "Being with Adrien, the lies, it's tearing me up inside." "Why? Did he do something to hurt you?" Cat felt horrible, using the mask to find out what Marinette didn't want to tell him as Adrien, but he had to know what had brought her to the point of being akumatized over him. He had to know to make this right. "Yes, and no," she sniffled. "Adrien is... It's just too much, Cat. Then let me handle it for you. I'm your champion, your hero, right? Let me make it right for you. Can't you see? You can't fix this. I can't fix this. Adrien can't fix this. I'm just broken by all this sweet, sincere lies. It hurts too much, Cat. He grabbed her by the shoulders and pulled her away from him so he could look her in the face. Marinette, you aren't making any sense. He's in danger now. Because of me? The worst part, I'm in love with Adrien, Cat. And it's all a lie. He stared at her, his hands gripping her shoulders as if she was suddenly his anchor, only barely registering the beeping of his ring. His cheeks burned, and if she hadn't been occupied with her own crisis, he would have seen it. So many things passed vividly before his mind's eye as her words sank like stones into his heart. Laughing with Marinette at the market, how her hugs filled him up, the way his heart fluttered in his chest when she leaned against him or looked up at him through her lashes, how he couldn't seem to get through an hour anymore without missing her touch, how the scent of a cherry almond perfume clung to his skin and fought off the loneliness so that he could sleep at night, how much he wanted to kiss her under the cherry blossoms during the photo shoot, how she had held him when he had fallen apart afterwards. The kiss that haunted his waking hours. The kiss he battled with himself moment by moment for wanting to repeat. But what about Buttercup? He rasped from a mouth gone dry. Your confession? The 3 sons. She covered her face with her hands, pushing the heels of her palms against her eyes to banish the tears. Don't you see, Cat? Adrien is Buttercup. He always has been. She leapt to her feet, pacing the room as her hands clutched her forehands in frustration. I knew it was a bad idea, but he seemed so disappointed at the thought of me not liking his plan. I would do almost anything to make him happy, Cat. But we've grown so close, and he's just so warm and sweet and thoughtful. He likes to hold me, because he doesn't have a lot of closeness in his life, and for a while I was lying to myself that it would be enough. But now, I'm dreading the day we actually prove Lila is wrong, because then it would be over. Adrien would let it go. Let me go. And we'd be back being friends, except I'll be broken because I'm more in love with him than ever. Her words rang through him, resonating like the bells of Notre Dame. He trembled with the weight and the truth of them. You're not a lie. You are sunshine and kindness and forgiveness and one of the most wonderful people I know. The girl who turned you down is an idiot for not seeing how sweet and kind and funny you are. The gift, the part of you that is only you, is beautiful, and I'm so glad you feel you can share it with me. I know I'm just a mess most of the time and terribly clumsy, but for whatever it's worth, I love you, Adrien, more than you'll ever know. I can't let myself be akumatized, Marinette continued, as his mind revolved around her as his center. I won't fight you. I can't make this whole thing worse for you, and I don't want to hurt Adrien. He is just everything. Everything about him just makes me feel strong and weak at the same time, but I don't have to pretend to be strong for him when I'm not. He balances me, makes me laugh, makes me feel whole and pretty and worthy for the first time in, I don't know, forever. And when he kissed me, oh, there aren't even words for that. But the closer we get, the more it hurts, Cat. I even told him I loved him, and he just said I was his best friend. He pulled her into his arms. She leaned into his embrace, tears streaming from her eyes. The bells rang on in his head, fighting his heartbeat and stealing his brain. Marinette had told him she loved him, and he had tried to tell her how much she meant to him, but he had messed it up. She thought he meant she was just his good friend when he wanted more than that. So much that he ached with it. He had tried in that early morning phone call, but she had said the near kiss didn't have to mean anything unless they wanted it to. Oh, he wanted it to mean something amazing and precious. How much he wanted to kiss away her tears, to tell her he loved her. The thought lit up his mind like a bolt of lightning. He had loved Marinette all along, hadn't he? That was the only explanation for the confusion and the pull he had always felt from her. Wanting, no, needing her to like him. The way that day at the ice rink suddenly made sense. How he had felt so strong seeing her with Luca. Why he had so hurriedly left Kwami to run after Marinette. She had been sad that day because she was helping him get what she thought he wanted. A date with another girl. Even at the cost of her own heart. She was sweet, amazing, brave, shy, delicate, and strong. She was so kind and thoughtful, so loving and generous. Marinette sacrificed for him, for his happiness. No one had ever done that before. She had always made him laugh, knew his favourite flavour of macaroon, and had learnt his schedule. She wouldn't stand up for herself, but she continued to fight for him in every way she could, from busted knuckles to a broken heart. And he had inadvertently friend-zoned her. Oh, how many times had he missed what she was trying to say? Why didn't he realize that what she had described at the movie theatre was how she acted around him? Cat's head was swimming. He was Buttercup. Marinette loved him. She had said her lips burned for him. All those sweet, corny, ridiculous words came back to him with extreme clarity. And he had kissed her. And he had kissed her. But hurt her by ending it too soon because he didn't know it was Adrien that she loved. He had been pushing her away, not intentionally, but still. He had hurt his princess deeply, without even knowing it. Marinette, he whispered, his voice as hoarse as if he'd been shouting. Adrien, his friendships are more important to him. Maybe he didn't know how to say what you mean to him. Oh, Cat, I don't know anymore. It just hurts to have love pouring out and feel like it's being poured back in only for it to go up in smoke. I know, he said. He held her tightly, afraid that if he let her go, she would break down once more. He wanted to kiss her right then. Tell her how much he meant to him. Run away from it all and just hold her like this forever. But he couldn't. Right now, he was Cat. Cat wasn't the one she loved. Cat was her good friend, her champion, her confidant. All he could do was squeeze her tight and let her feel that she wasn't alone. It's gonna be okay, Marinette. I promise. She cuddled more deeply into his embrace. Thank you for saving me, Kitty. You really were my hero today. The trust in her voice, the nickname, the way she curled herself within the circle of his arms was almost more than he could resist. He let out a ragged breath as he ran his hand up and down her back to soothe her. Shall I carry you away, princess? He asked tenderly, his heart pounding like a jackhammer against his ribs. Was there a chance she could accept him behind the mask? Cat could hold her and comfort her, shelter her from the storm of life. But it would only be a nightmare romance. Secrets and shadows and lies. A love hidden from prying eyes and shadow more. No. Marinette deserves so much more. She deserves sunshine and openness and someone who could shower her with affection, showing her the world how amazing she truly was. Adrien could give her that, but Cat Noir could not. Oh, but what he wouldn't give to be Adrien now, instead of Cat, to feel her silky hair against his fingers, to give her more than masks and platitudes. I wish you could, Cat, she murmured. She sniffled and wiped her eyes. But I have to see this through. This isn't just about me. It's about Adrien too, and all the people being fooled by Lila. Surely, he's worth a broken heart, right? I think you're the bravest person I've ever known, Marinette, he whispered, pressing a kiss on her hair. And Adrien would be a fool not to love you. I hurt him, didn't I? He wants to take care of you and help you. You might have hurt him some, but only because you wouldn't let him in, he sighed, choosing his words carefully. Adrien has spent so much time feeling isolated and lost. Helping you has made him feel alive and special, like he can take on the world if only for you. So, yes, while running away from him probably hurt, it isn't for the reasons you think. She rubbed her cheek against his collarbone, and he struggled to suppress the blush that colored his face at her caresses. How can I make this right, Cat? I wouldn't hurt Adrien for the world, but it's hard when he is so sweet and cozy and romantic. Then there's his father, who just a manipulative bully and a candy cane ascot. I want to make everything good for Adrien, give him all the love and affection he craves, but he sees me as his best friend. I don't want to lose that any more than I... Her words broke off with a sad hiccup making him chuckle. He lifted a chin so he could look into her eyes. Then, tell him the truth, Marinette. For all you know, he's going through the same thing. Just be honest with him, and everything will work out all right. He smiled down at her and tapped her nose. It twitched and his smile returned to a grin. Or I might turn criminal and steal your heart after all, my little mouse. She blinked and blushed furiously. How can you say those things after I turned you down yesterday? Because the words that mean the most are the ones we shouldn't hide. But I will admit it is easier behind the mask, he said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Adrien is lonely, remember? Don't you think he would want to know that someone as amazing as you loves him? He's just so wonderful, Cat. He's smart and thoughtful and kind and funny. He is sunshine. What can he possibly see in me? He deserves someone as amazing as he is. What can I offer him that isn't just ordinary? Her words were like a kick in the chest. He took her face in his hand and looked her sternly. Is this why you never told him? You're afraid he'll reject you for being too ordinary? Marinette, you are the furthest thing from ordinary. You are smart, clever, and selfless, and warm, and sweet, and beautiful, and... Words failed him, and he could barely contain himself. He wanted so much to kiss her, let her know without the clumsiness of words how wonderful she really was. You are not Adrien right now, he berated himself, pulling his hair in frustration. You are Cat Noir. Adrien is the one she loves. It has to be with Adrien or not at all. She took the decision from his hands by kissing him gently on the cheek. Thank you, Kitty. You're special to me too, and I'm sorry if talking about Adrien like this has hurt you. Please know I would never want that. I just have very few people I can talk to right now. I know, Princess. I want you to be happy with Adrien if that's what you want. He stroked her cheekbone with a crooked grin and flushed cheeks. Promise me, you'll tell him, okay? If he rejects you, I personally will get Ladybug to hang him from the Eiffel Tower until he begs for forgiveness. While it was amusing to think about, not to mention ironic, he had no intention of rejecting her. Not his Lady Bountiful, his princess, his sweet, sweet Marinette. Her laughter startled him. I don't think Ladybug would go along with that, but I appreciate the sentiment. I will try. She wrapped him in a final hug as his ring beeped. Sounds like you need to go, huh? Yeah, I'm surprised the floating stomach that called himself my Kwami hasn't dumped my transformation yet. Are you gonna be okay? She nodded with a smile so soft he felt himself melt under his warmth. I'll be fine now. Thank you, Cat Noir. He bowed and kissed her knuckles before leaping to her bed and through the skylight. He needed to get back to school, and then he would check the thumb drive Gigami had given him with a paper copy of Lila's background check. He wasn't going to lose Marinette, and while there wasn't much he could do against Shadow Moth and his father, he did have something he could work on. He de-transformed behind the school, and Plague gave him a serious look. That was a close one, kid. I know, he murmured, handing his Kwami a wedge of cheese. I just wish I knew why Marinette is pushing me away now. Do you think what Gabriel said last night made her feel like she was responsible? That she was the cause of getting me in trouble? Princess loves you. Of course she's backing away to keep you safe. The cat garbled around his mouthful of camembert. That's quite the temper tantrum he threw last night, wasn't it? He grunted, running his hand through his hair distractedly. But you heard Lila. She said she looks out for his interests at school. He set her to spy on me, and now she thinks she's won. He would have had to have told her to watch Marinette stay away from me. Makes me want to eat all her hair and hack it up in her shoes. Plague growled, looking more like a panther than a kitten. Adrien chuckled darkly. Well, as fun as that would be to watch, the first thing we need to do is take down the liar once and for all. After that, we can deal with him. You with me? His little friend's eyes grinned wickedly, and a disconcerting smile full of sharp teeth stretched to an unbelievable extent across his face. For you and Princess, all the way, Kit. The false fox is going down. Thank you for listening to part 22. She confessed to Cat that Adrien is Buttercup. Oh my goodness, what's gonna happen next? Is she gonna tell him to his face? Oh, okay, stay tuned for part 23. Will be coming soon. Make sure you go and send Shika lots of love for writing this. Make sure you send me lots of love by smashing that like button. Comment down below what you think will happen in the next part and what you thought of this one. And make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out on future parts and other stories and one-shots and everything that's happening, especially now that my schedule is a bit all over the place at the moment. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification button and the like button and all the buttons, so and send me some love, and I hope you are good, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.